Hey folks, Quill18 here, bringing you another Starcraft 2 commentary. This one's going to be a little bit different, a little slower paced. It's actually going to be a little bit more tutorialized, something I've meant to be doing. Let me just start over let me pause this and start this over. I'm going to make this a little longer. I'll have it be a two-part video, I think. Usually I try to squeeze it into one part, but I think there's going to be some value in taking it a little bit slower. So mostly it's going to be a Zerg side tutorial. I can do a couple of demos for the other races, but I'm not as expert. Well, I'm not an expert with the Zerg, but I'm certainly not with the Terran Protoss, although I have been trying to play them a little bit more lately. So this is going to be we're going to look at the sort of basic ideas behind this, and I'm not going to, I don't know. There's going to be a certain amount of StarCraft commentaries because this is what I like to do, but I'm not going to turn my channel into a StarCraft 2 channel. But this might give you some of the background information you need to be able to watch the replays that you'd see on Husky StarCraft or HD StarCraft. Very, very good YouTube commentators for SC2. And even if you don't play the game, I think you can get a lot of value and enjoyment out of just watching these. Those are very high-level players, and you see some really creative and interesting stuff. So, from the Zerg point of view, when you start off the game, so you've got units that are your workers, they're called drones, and they gather materials for you, they gather minerals, and they gather gas, Vespene gas over here. They also build your buildings. Now, every race has a different building mechanic. The way the Zerg do it is it's actually your drones go and morph into the building. They become the building. So effectively, you lose a drone every time you build a building. Whereas my opponent, the Terran here, you'll see his workers will come over and they will start constructing a building like a barracks. And when the barracks is finally done building, they're going to go. You can use the drone to go, or the worker. They're actually called SCVs, to go and do something else. And the Protoss finally, their probes. They don't build the buildings, they warp them in. So they just go over to an area, so they'll come over here, and I don't know, I guess they drop a beacon or something on the ground, and it just starts warping in the building. And then as soon as they start, they just go over here, they start the building, warp in, and then they can go right back to mining minerals. So probes are not tied up by constructing buildings. So it's very interesting little differences in balance for each of the races. The Zerg units tend to be a little bit cheaper, or the Zerg buildings tend to be a little bit cheaper, because you've already paid 50 minerals for your drone to start off with. So as soon as you start the game, one of the shortcut keys you can use is Control F1 to very quickly select all your drones and send them to your mineral patch. What you can see here is I actually missed the mineral patch. So they all came over to where I clicked, but I'd clicked just off the patch, so that was a mistake. So make sure you get that right on, and then they'll automatically split up and go to individual mineral patches, because only one drone can work a mineral patch at once. That being said, so there are 9 mineral patches here. You don't just want 9 drones mining them, because when they're traveling back and forth, another drone can be mining it. So how many drones do you want? You want at least 2 per mineral patch, and in fact, for the ones that are a little farther away like these, you actually want about 3 there. So in general, so you've got 9 patches, so 2 per would be 18. So in practice, you probably want about, let's say, 24 mining the minerals. I don't know, maybe not. Let's say 20 mining the minerals. And then the gas, you can have 3 drones on each of the minerals, on each of the gas. So if we say 20 doing the minerals, and then 6 more on the gas, so we're at 26. And if you look down here, each one of these rows is 8. So that would be 8, 16, 24. So really, you kind of want to fill up an entire page full. If you've got more than 24 selected, you'd have a second number here, and you can toggle between the two. And you want somewhere around there for full saturation. But part of the question is, how quickly do you saturate this? I could have just kept spamming drones and fully saturated my mineral line, and that would give me a huge economy. I'd be quite wealthy. Of course, I do have to use the drones to actually morph into the extractor. And another one here, so that you need to build a building on the gas so that you can then follow up and mine it. So obviously, I've got to keep constructing drones to replace those that I use up. But the big question is, how many do you build? Because when you're just building drones, you're not building defenses. And let me pause right here and explain what this building here. What I'm morphing in here is a spawning pool. For the Zerg, once you build a spawning pool, you can then start building Zerglings. Oh, and I haven't mentioned how do you start building these units. Your hatchery. This is special as Zerg. As Zerg, you've got a hatchery here. One thing you've noticed is this is where the drones bring the minerals to. This is also where they're going to bring the gas to. And at the total here, you can see the total amount of minerals I have currently sitting in my bank, and this would be my gas. We'll get to this third thing in just a moment. So the hatchery here spits out larvae from time to time. I can't really see one. I believe actually there's one right behind. Let me pause and unpause real quick. There we go. Here's a larva right there. So the larva doesn't do anything, it just sits around the hatchery. But what I'm actually doing when I'm building a drone is I am selecting the larva, which I can do. If I select the hatchery, there's a button here to select all my larvae. Or I could select it manually, but no one ever does that. So you click on the hatchery, and then usually you hit it's S to select the larva. It's different in the replay, so I'm just going to click it here. And then it shows you all the units you can turn this larva into, including drones, which are very important. Now, every unit you have takes up one supply. This is my supply right here. I'm currently at 15 of 18. 18 is the maximum number of units I can have. And my hatchery by itself provides me a limit of 10. And then if I need to increase that, I can turn my drones into an overlord. An overlord doesn't actually use supply, and it actually provides me with 8 more supply. So that increases my limit. So every time I start getting close to this cap here, I make sure to build another overlord, assuming I remember, so that way I can keep increasing my total more and more and more. The other races have slightly different mechanics, like the Terrans here, the humans, they build these supply depots, but they basically do the same thing. You can see my opponent here is currently at 14 of 27 supply. So he's actually built his an excess of supply depots very quickly, more than he needed to support his population. But the reason is, many Terrans do this. They block off their ramp, their choke point. This is the only way into their base. A little more complicated than that, but let's say this is the only way into their base. And so they like to block it off. And Terrans can do this because their supply depots can lower into the ground and rise up again. So when they're lowered, units can move across them. So they can lower the supply depots so they can leave their base and then raise them up again to form a wall. Also, there are other buildings like their barracks here, and even their command center can lift off and fly around because they're on jets. So every race has got a little different mechanic. So if I bring up these menus here are only available. Wow, my frame rate just went to hell. I hope I'm not running out of hard drive space. I'll be right back. Okay, no, everything... Wow, everything should be okay, but my frame rate is still going to shit. For no reason at all. Let me try one more time. Okay. I think we're better now. I think Firefox is taking up a whole bunch of resources on my computer. Sorry about that. I don't even remember what I was talking about. I guess I just finished talking about the supply. So, yeah, so the spawning pool, and I remember one of the topics I was discussing. When I finish this, I will then be able to turn my larvae into zerglings, which are my very, very basic military unit. They're very small. In fact, each larva mutates into 2 zerglings. They're very weak, very inexpensive, basically, and each zergling only takes up half supply, basically. So to turn one larva into a pair of zerglings, I do need a supply for that, but individually they don't take up very much. They only cost me 50 minerals, very, very cheap. And these other units tend to be more and more powerful, at least individually. But the thing is, just because the Zergling are the cheapest, earliest, and individually weakest doesn't mean they're no good. In fact, Zerglings tend to see play through all areas of the game. They sort of never stop. And the same is true for Terrans. Their first unit their basic unit is a Marine. And you can see this also costs 50 minerals, just like the Zerglings do. But you do only get 1 Marine per. And but they'll have more health, and they also have a rifle, so they have a ranged attack, whereas the Zerglings are purely melee. They run up to stuff and just kind of bite them or claw at them. And I'm not sure if 2 Zerglings beat 1 Marine or not. It may take 4 or 3 or something there. I'm not sure what the math is. Part of it depends on how are you able to get in range closely, and then the numbers really pay a big difference because range stacks up very nicely. And the Zerglings can have trouble fighting them at first. But one of the things that you will do as a Zerg is you can upgrade from the spawning pool. You can get something called Metabolic Boost, which is referred to as by some as Zergling Speed. And then your Zerglings, people refer to them from that point on as Speedlings, because they go considerably faster, and it really helps them to defeat ranged enemies, because the ranged enemies are able to get far fewer shots off before the Zerglings close. Plus then the Zerglings can sort of surround the enemies very quickly, prevent them from escaping. Now what am I doing here? I'm actually sending out a scout, which is something very, very worthwhile. In fact, this is a relatively late scout. I'm not expecting too much. I fully expect this to be blocked off. That's fine. Mostly I'm checking to see, I will hope to see, does he have a tech lab equipped here? And can I spot a Reaper behind the lines? And again, this might be a little bit late to spot a Reaper rush, but Reaper rushes is not something I've been experiencing too much. A Reaper is a unit that the Terrans can build. And look at that. Let me pause here. Just as I show up with my drone, he actually drops his supply depot because he was sending out a scout right then. So I'm able to actually sneak into his base a tiny bit, but you're going to see it doesn't last very long because the Marine just blows me apart. But I do see he's building a second barracks, and I do know he's got the tech lab, but the fact that I don't see the Reaper yet, because normally I'd expect almost a couple of Reapers, makes me feel pretty safe. Again, really, in practice, if this was a really high-level game, this guy could already have a couple of Reapers built, and he could have built like a bunker here. A bunker is the Terran defensive unit, where his infantry can go inside the bunker and basically become unkillable. But this is a much, much lower-level play. But if you watch the higher-level replays, you will see that happen quite a bit. Luckily, I don't have to face that here. Now, my spawning pool is completed, and over here, this is the production tab. I've already started building some Zerglings. I've got 4 Zerglings being built, and click on the building here. I've set a rally point, so when my Zerglings spawn, they will automatically go right here and then stay there, because I want to try to get them to guard the ramp. And then I've got a second arrow going to the minerals because that's my rally point for my workers. The other races, like the humans, they'll only have one rally point coming off their command center because this only builds worker units. They build their workers, their military units from specialized buildings like the barracks. So let's continue here. Now, one note that I've done, one thing you might want to note here is I have both gas geysers going. And as Zerg, that is something you don't always see. If I wanted to just go heavy Zerglings, I don't need very much gas because the Zerglings only cost 50 minerals. But what my plan is on this map is to go with a decent Zergling ground force, but supplemented, and I actually see this, I know this worker is coming, which is why I split up my Zerglings like that, try to get us around. I don't quite pull it off, but I've got another batch of Zerglings coming here. And my Queen has a ranged attack, and we blow her up. The Queen's not really a military unit, but she can't help defend your base early on. I'm trying to prevent the scout. I don't want him to know that I've got 2 gas, because 2 gas means that I'm going to be researching higher tech units. I want to assume that maybe I am just sticking with Zerglings and to build accordingly, or something like that. But I'm morphing my hatchery into a lair. This will unlock the next tier of tech buildings. I had a few other things I could have built at this level. I could have built a roach lair, a baneling nest. These are all things that you might see in games. But I've teched all the way up to tier 2, which just completed here. And the reason I have so much gas is I'm going to be building something called a spire, which allows me to build something called mutalisks. Mutalisks are air units, and they're quite potent, and Zergs can get them fairly early. And so, if you make the decision to go Mutalisks, you can get these air units quite a bit quicker than anything the other people will be able to get. Like, if I look here, he's just building, he's got a factory going on, so he's got 2 barracks. He's got some Marines and Marauders. Marauders are heavier people. I think he may have been expecting me to go Roaches. Roaches are a Zerg unit that are particularly vulnerable to Marauders. They're very good against Marines, but very poor against Marauders, and he ends up going quite Marauder heavy. Marauders can't attack air, though, so my Mutalisks are actually going to work out exceptionally well against him. So he's got a factory going on, and I think he will follow up this factory with a starport, which allows him to build air units. But by the time he does that, I'm already going to have plenty of air. Or, no, apparently I was a little bit delayed building my spire. I've built it way out here. Zerg can only build on this gray stuff. It's called creep, and my overlords can poop out creep in places. And I've had the overlord do that over here so that I could build a spire, because it's possible he's got the ability to do a scanner sweep, and he can scan my base and know, what I've got building over here. So by building it over here, it makes it very unlikely that he'll be able to see it if he does scan me, because I want to completely surprise him with my Mutalisks. Again, I've got a good number of Zerglings here. Not a fantastic number. If he were to fight his forces against my Zerglings, I might be in trouble. But they've got, I don't know if you can tell, they've got little wings. And that is because I've completed researching my speed, my Zergling speed. So they move quite quick, they can get surrounds and generally be very good. This is my evolution chamber. I'm using it to build upgrades for my units. And I'm just about researching my ground carapace level 1, which gives my units more armor. The Zerglings have 35 hit points. Marines do 6 points of damage. So, right now, 6 shots from a Marine is enough to kill a Zergling. But if I have 1 point of armor, then each one of their shots does 1 less.